Welcome back to MMA Al Dente. I am the jerk off who is stupid enough to have bet on professional wrestling. That's right. I lost money on WrestleMania. And then I called up and tried to bitch my way to a refund, but they weren't having any of it. I was like, you don't understand. Okay, the ref was knocked unconscious, out cold. And then John Cena hits Cody Rhodes in the face with the world title belt, knocking him out cold. Do you have any idea how illegal this all is? And it's not like there's no evidence. It's on Peacock. There's video evidence. I want a refund. They're like, sir, I'm sorry. There's nothing we can do for you. In fact, there's nothing anybody can do for you because you have a low IQ and you thought it was a good idea to bet on professional wrestling. But look, you can't win your money back with any horseshit on pro wrestling. But if there's any horseshit with MMA, they do refund your money. And that's why you should listen to me when I break down UFC, Kansas City, whatever this is. Okay, opening up the card, we have Jocelyn Edwards taking on Chelsea Chandler. My prediction for this fight is Edwards wins by decision. And having said that, I've already put a small bet on Chelsea Chandler at plus 240. I just expected the odds to be tighter, and I did. Look, I thought Edwards would win before even looking at the odds. I had it in my head. She's my prediction to win, but I figured the odds would be tighter, and I'd be looking to play Chelsea Chandler's plus points. But without any point spread and with just the money line, I think there is value at Chelsea Chandler plus 240. But yeah, the pick is Edwards wins. I think Edwards is better on the feet. I think if she doesn't let Chelsea Chandler crowd her and take away the kicking range, I think Edwards will comfortably work her way to a decision. But Chelsea is going to be trying to get in her face and maybe just to land some big straight lefts and up and elbows and things. But I think making this a physical fight, tying up Jocelyn Edwards and getting on top of her is her path to victory. Chelsea Chandler doesn't always mix it up, but she's mixed it up enough in the past to know that she can fight that fight. And I think even though she's not as skilled as some of the girls that have beaten Jocelyn Edwards, she is still a big physical problem, and she can be heavy on top. And I think that would be her path to victory, and she's got at least a decent chance of making that happen. On the feet, Chelsea Chandler's tough and seems to have some good pop in her punches too. And she's got that relentlessness, being part of the Diaz camp. She's not quite like a Leslie Smith, but she can keep going. I think she's definitely got good traits as a fighter, but I think technically she's behind against Jocelyn Edwards. Maybe even on the ground, but not enough of a deficit there where the fight can't be won with top position. But on the feet, I think there is enough of a deficit there. But Chelsea Chandler is rough around the edges. She's got power and size and whatever. But Jocelyn Edwards is the better overall striker and specifically the better kicker. And I think if she keeps this fight at kicking range or beyond kicking range, she's going to be dictating things and winning this fight. And that is the prediction. I'm going with Edwards winning that type of fight. I'm going with her takedown defense holding up, and maybe even she'll mix it up. Jocelyn Edwards, she can take the fight to the ground. That could be plan A for her here, for all I know. But I think she's going to find herself with a technical advantage on the feet, and once she feels that, she's not going to be looking to mix things up too much. So yeah, the pick is Edwards wins by decision. As for any real solid bets, I'll wait for everything and look to play maybe the plus points or the decision line or whatever. But right now, with nothing else staring at me but the money line, I've put a small bet on Chelsea Chandler just because I put this as a closer fight. Or in my head, I said, yeah, I'm going with Edwards, but whoever's plus 140, I might put a bet on. And then I see she's plus 240. So, yeah, small bet on Chandler. Next up, we have Timothy Cuamba versus Roberto Romero. My prediction for this fight is Timothy Cuamba wins, and I'm going to go with him winning by decision. And the basis for the prediction is, even though he's 0-2 in the UFC, I think he's shown some solid traits as a fighter in these two losses. And I also think in general he's the better athlete. I think he moves better, and I think he'll win that wrestling battle and score whatever points there are to be scored on the ground. So yeah, I've got Timothy Cuamba winning. But I do think Roberto Romero will be bringing that pressure. Roberto Romero's a durable Mexican fighter, even though he's been knocked out once. But he's still a guy that looks like he can take a solid shot, and he's the guy that's going to be leading the dance, I think. He's not as fast as Cuamba. I think Cuamba will be a problem for him athletically to corral him in the first place with footwork. But I think again, Roberto Romero will be leading the dance. He never stops coming forward. He can fight longer on the outside, trying to work the kicks in the first few minutes, but he really just wants to get in and rip combinations to the body and the head. And there have been fights where he's trying to go through guys on the ground, and sometimes he can, but other times he can't when he's facing an athletic problem, and he's shown he can just pin the guy against the cage and fight that type of grueling clinch fight for 15 minutes as well. And maybe that's what will happen here, but I think Timothy Cuamba is going to be physically superior to him, where it'll be tough to corner in the first place, and the stronger guy in tight anyway, and the guy that's better at getting on top, the better wrestler. So I'm going with Cuamba winning this fight. But each guy is just getting going in the UFC. I mentioned 0-2 for Timothy Cuamba, but Roberto Romero is 0-1, and that one loss is very forgivable. He lost to far and away the best fighter he's ever fought, David Onama, and I believe he took the fight on very short notice as well. And he still handled himself pretty well, especially early on. Took it to David Onama, but he wasn't able to close the show. And then Onama took it to him and eventually just jabbed him up pretty much for the second and third round. Kept him at the end of his jab and put together the better striking. But he still looks solid, even especially if he was gassed in that fight, not falling apart against David Onama and his chin not failing him. But he did get outlasted and outworked. And that's what happened in his previous loss, which was just 2 fights ago against Patrick Lehane, or Lehane. Forget how they said his name, but I saw the fight. And yeah, I thought the guy was able to outlast Roberto Romero and outwork him and put together the better striking down the stretch. But Romero's tough. He has been knocked out once. It was in 8 seconds. So even though I haven't seen the fight, it's the only fucking fight of his that I can't find. But I still can imagine what it looked like, and I'm sure he was hit with some big shots. I don't know whether or not it was a bad stoppage. There's always that. But at the very least, he was clipped. But yeah, I think the guy that I've seen fight, plenty of 3-round fights and plenty of standing fights, is pretty solid here, pretty tough. And of course, he stood up to David Onama as well. So I'm not picking Cuamba to knock him out, even though Cuamba has some nice knockouts. His win over Michael Stack. But I do think Timothy Cuamba can plug himself into those recent losses and outwork him. It's not like Cuamba's always the last man standing in his fights. His last decision victory was over Mateo Alejandro Vogel, very talented fighter. And even though I thought Cuamba definitely won, he was outlasted in that one. But he is the guy that, after getting his ass kicked against Lucas Almeida in his last fight, was really battling hard in round 3 after I had counted him out for about 10 minutes. And he still had a lot of fight in him and still had some takedowns in him as well. And I'm thinking those traits that he showed, plus his athleticism and everything I've seen from the guy, leads me to think he should get the victory here by outworking Roberto Romero. Cuamba's been defeated once before those 2 losses, though, and it was to this guy, Ivan Pena. He was able to stuff the takedowns of Timothy Cuamba, and I think Cuamba kind of got a little tired, especially for round one, and then ended up getting nearly choked and then eventually choked and finished in round one. And that guy, Ivan Tena, is one of the best victories on Roberto Romero's record. It's a split decision, but I thought Romero definitely won the fight. Really close, but Romero marched him down and hit him with about 1,000 body shots. And even there were moments where it looked like both guys, each guy was going to take over. Like Tena was going to take over. And then Roberto Romero was the guy that outlasted him and kept that pressure up in round three. So that was a great win for him. But still, I think the athleticism, the physicality will be the difference here with Timothy Cuamba. Plus, again, he's shown enough traits himself. And I also think Timothy Cuamba is much more likely to plug himself into a knockout loss for Roberto Romero than Roberto Romero is likely to plug himself into the submission loss for Timothy Cuamba. Even though I think his last win comes by submission, a nice rear naked choke, Roberto Romero. But yeah, I'm going with Cuamba here. Intangibles and skill set and all the traits and all the horse shit considered, I give the edge to Timothy Cuamba, and I'm going to go with him winning by decision. Really fucking long-winded. Next up, we have Jacqueline Amorim versus Polyana Viana. And I have to say, if you know either one of these girls' phone numbers, if you could do me a favor and just keep it to yourself, because I wouldn't know how to satisfy either one of them. But I do think Jacqueline Amorim is very cute, and she is my prediction to win this fight. I'm going to take her winning by submission, and the basis for the prediction is I've seen her fight. She's a fucking monster on the floor, and I think she's going to be too much for Polyana Viana. I'm going to take it happening in round one, and I guess the fight I'm envisioning is her getting on top of Polyana, but I think the submission might come more easily if she was taken down by Polyana, or if she pulled guard. But either way, I think she's a monster down there, and she'll be able to submit Polyana Viana. Polyana, though, is one of the most dangerous girls in the world. She's got 13 victories, 13 finishes, 5 knockouts, and some real fucking knockouts over good fighters as well, and 8 submissions. So I'll be waiting for the under and all the other props to drop and the rest of it. But I do think Jacqueline is going to be too much for her. Only 2 girls have ever been able to submit Polyana Viana. Yasmin Lucindo got her out of there with an arm triangle choke. That was her going through her from the top. And she was also submitted from the guard against Veronica Hardy. I think Jacqueline Amorim is good enough to win on the bottom or on top. Of course, on top, I don't think it'll be an arm triangle. I would pick an arm bar for Jacqueline Amorim. But yeah, I think she's too much for her. And of course, Jillian Robertson was able to TKO Polyana Viana, but that was another jiu-jitsu loss where Jillian was mauling her from the top. So yeah, I do think she loses, and I do think she's getting finished here against Jacqueline A. But I think if I'm wrong and Polyana is the win, we're also going to see a finish. Jacqueline Amorim's got 1 loss, and it was the Sam Hughes, the fucking the queen underdog there, Sam Hughes. And Sam outlasted her, survived the danger, and then stuffed her guard and took some of the cardio from her and outworked her for rounds 2 and 3. Polyana Viana's a skilled girl, but I think if she's winning the fight and outlasting Jacqueline Amorim, it's only going to make it more likely that she gets a finish. Because Polyana Viana is that fucking dangerous. She's much more dangerous than most girls on the feet with real power. Where if Amorim is tired and she's caught there, I think she gets knocked unconscious, knocked out. And on the ground, Polyana Viana may not be in the league of Jacqueline Amorim, but she's still better than most and more dangerous than most on the ground. And if she gets Amorim tired, a submission isn't out of the realm of possibility. So yeah, in general, that's my way of saying I haven't bet on Jacqueline Amorim, but I am going to be looking for the under and the props. Amorim winning by submission in the first 2 rounds, especially in round 1, and Polyana Viana, I'll put sprinkles on her winning down the stretch. And I say all this shit without having seen the odds. Maybe they're all dog shit, and I bet nothing on this fight. But in general, I expect a finish, and that's why before the props comes the over under, and I'll be looking for that. I would set the line at 1.5 rounds, but 2.5 rounds I would play at complete dog shit odds because I'm very sure this one ends in a finish. But yeah, I'm going with Jacqueline Amorim. The one girl to get her out of to beat her was Sam Hughes. Sam is one of the most reliable grinders, a true round three fighter as well. You can't say that about Polyana Viana. Again, she's dangerous as fuck and all the rest of it, but she doesn't really plug into the Sam Hughes loss so easily. And every girl Jacqueline Amorim has fought since has been solid, and she's put them all away. Corey McKenna and Vanessa Demopoulos. Say what you will about the stoppage, but they're both great submission victories, and I think she's good enough to beat Polyana. So Amorim is the pick. I've got her winning by round one submission, and the bets, if the odds are worth it, will be going every which fucking way. Up next, we have Cameron Saaiman versus Malcolm Wellmaker. That I'm going with Malcolm Wellmaker here. I'm going to take him winning by knockout. Although a decision wouldn't surprise me. But I'm going to take him winning by knockout. I think Cameron Saaiman's a really talented fighter with a big future and a ton of upside and the rest of it. But I still think Malcolm Wellmaker is going to be too much for him here. I don't think this is some ordinary UFC debutant. I feel like such a cocksucker when I use that word. But Malcolm Wellmaker is going to be a problem for him on the feet, I think. Malcolm hit a beautiful counter right hand against Adam Bromhold on the Contender Series, moving backwards as well. And he's very comfortable as well with a southpaw stance with his left hand. I think he manages his range really well. He's got pop in both hands, and he's just got really solid striking. And I think he's going to be able to duplicate the success that Peyton Talbot had, and I envision him getting a similar type of finish, clipping him with Cameron Saaiman coming in and putting him away. Cameron Saaiman, though, that's the only time he's been stopped. And Peyton Talbot is an exceptional young fighter. So it's not like that's the shittiest loss anybody can have. But it is still a loss. And he's got two of them recently. And I do think, even though he's got a lot of upside and talent and the rest of it, he's been up against it with some shitty matchmaking here. And this is just another example of that. Malcolm Wellmaker's not the most proven guy, but I think he's going to prove out. And in retrospect, this will be a really tough road that Cameron Saaiman went down. But I'm envisioning him losing this fight and getting a third consecutive loss. So I don't know if that'll mean the end of this UFC stint or not. But yeah, I'm picking him to lose. Cameron lost to Peyton Talbot, got TKO'd in round two. He was hurt a few times in that fight. And then eventually in round two, he got clipped with a big hook coming in and put away with some ground and pound. And before that, he lost his first fight ever to Christian Rodriguez. It was a really close fight, and Christian Rodriguez is a really awesome fighter. But yeah, Christian did enough to win that fight. I do think Cameron Saaiman showed potential beating Manny Martinez, Steven Koslow, especially outlasting that guy who was mounting him early, and knocking out Terrence Mitchell as well, even though Terrence Mitchell kind of came and went. But I don't think Malcolm Wellmaker is going to be some regular Joe in the UFC. I think right now he's 30 years old. So even though he's even less experienced than Cameron Saaiman, he's in his athletic prime. And I think he looks like a pretty composed fighter. He's a guy that I've seen on the ground, on the feet, go the distance in 3 rounds and 5 rounds in a split decision and majority decision victory. The 5 round was a majority decision win where he kneed the guy in the balls, I think, and was deducted a point. But he pretty much beat this solid journeyman, Taylor Moore, really durable journeyman. And I thought he looked good and a step ahead of the guy throughout all 5 rounds. And he also beat this guy, Zachariah Kamara, by split decision. That was a 3-round fight. And it was close, but in the end, he definitely got the better of the guy, and he did so with his grappling. Was able to take him down a few times, but in the end, advanced on him and dominated him down there. So he's pulled ahead in these decision victories, shown some good traits there, and also technically he seems to have skills everywhere. Sharp striker again, makes shit happen from both stances, and he's got some good pop in his punches, but he's also got some finishes on the ground. 2 submissions, and they're in his first 3 fights. But again, his grappling's been the difference in some of these other ones. So, yeah, I do favor Malcolm Wellmaker here. I think Cameron Saaiman, if he's able to get on top of him, that could be trouble. Maybe Cameron can go through him on the ground, or maybe he can just pin him and hold him and rack up points. But I think Malcolm's going to be a tough guy to take down. I do have to say he's got one amateur loss, and it is a round 3 armbar. So there's that. But that's over 6 years ago, and the guy I've seen recently looks really sharp. Even though he hasn't been fighting the highest level of opposition, he's still definitely got something, some visible talent, and I'm taking him to be too much for Cameron Saaiman in a way that Peyton Talbot was. So Malcolm Wellmaker is the pick. I've got him winning by knockout. I've already bet on him. The odds are even. It's a toss-up pretty much. And yeah, I'm going with Malcolm. Next up, we have Damon Blackshear versus Haile Alateng. My prediction is Damon Blackshear wins, and I'm going to go with him winning by decision. Having said that, I'm anxious to play Haile Alateng, or perhaps him winning by decision, which I do consider his primary path to victory. But right now, he's a 7-2 underdog, and I think he's better than that. Don't get me wrong, I am picking Blackshear, and I will explain why. But I think Haile Alateng, it's tough to gauge exactly where he's at, but he's shown at admittedly a lower level in the UFC that he's got some solid traits and he's got the takedowns in him to perhaps outpoint and outgrind Damon Blackshear. I think Damon Blackshear is a better grappler, and I think Damon Blackshear is a better striker. Here's where all that shit comes apart. That's why I'm picking Blackshear to win. I think he's got technical advantages everywhere. I think he's going to have a hard time in general getting on top of Haile Alateng, but of course, if he did, he's good enough to pretty much secure the round against anybody, secure the back, whatever. And a lot of guys inside the UFC, he can work over and get a submission, take their neck or rip their arms off. So it wouldn't totally surprise me if he was able to submit Haile Alateng, but I think he'd need a good bit of control time to make that happen. Haile Alateng's been submitted, and by the way, I might mean Alateng Haile. I don't know. But either way, he's been submitted once, and it was over a decade ago. Blackshear could next level him and show him he is that fucking beast who got a twister and just submitted Cody Gibson and Cody fucking Stamen, and he is a monster. But I'm still thinking his primary path to victory over Alateng Haile is decision. On the feet, I think Damon Blackshear is better. I think he is the sharper kickboxer. I think he can plug himself into the losses of Alateng Haile within the UFC, Casey Kenny, and Chris Gutierrez. And I think he is the sharper kicker, and he can win the kicking range fight. He may not beat the living shit out of him like Casey Kenny did, which really showcased Alateng Haile's toughness. But he definitely wins the technical battle. But on the feet, Haile Alateng has been knocked out a few times, TKO'd, I should say. But the only guy to knock him out in the last 10 years was Kai Asakura. Got him with a knee. What else? That guy's a fucking monster, as you probably know, but that's it. He's pretty fucking tough. I think he's got a solid chin on him. And, of course, Damon Blackshear has been knocked out within the last year in 15 seconds to Montel Jackson. He got steamrolled and put out. I don't think he's got a bad chin on him. I'm just saying that's probably a little more relevant at this point. But also, I think it's more relevant because even though Blackshear is probably the sharper striker, Alateng Haile has a missile of a right hand, and I think he hits harder. He's just got power and danger on his side. And As for the grappling chances for Haile Alateng, again, I think he's up against it generally in a jiu-jitsu sense, but he's good at getting on top, Alateng Haile. He's good at getting on top, specifically in round three, even in grueling fights. And he's also good at stuffing guards and neutralizing people. I don't think he advances on Damon Blackshear, and I don't think he comes close to submitting him. I think all that shit's on the Blackshear end of things. But I do think Haile Alateng could plug himself into some of the losses of Blackshear, which are admittedly to a way better class of fighter than Haile Alateng and grappler altogether. Fucking Danny Sabatello and Pat Sabatini and even Mario Batista recently. But I do think Haile Alateng, even though he's not reliable on that level, he still has some reliable traits. And he's in the realm of outgrinding Blackshear. And certainly if he lands the right shots, that'll help. But I am going with Blackshear. I do think, even though Haile Alateng's very difficult to take down, Blackshear's a nifty grappler. If he can turn a corner and take his back or whatever, find any advantageous position, hit a takedown, I think he can control him for that round. And on the feet, without any big moments or whatever, I think Damon Blackshear is the sharper striker. And I think Haile Alateng is going to be the more limited guy with the power-based attacks and whatever. Not that that can't win fights or even decisions. So yeah, I'm going with Blackshear, and I will wait to see everything else, the props and whatever. But I do think there's value on Haile Alateng for sure at 7-2 odds here. I think he's a difficult guy to take down in the first place, and that gives him much better chances than usual against Blackshear. Up next, we have Chris Gutierrez versus John Castaneda. My prediction for this fight is Chris Gutierrez wins, and I'm going to go with him winning by decision. And the basis for the prediction is going to be his jiu-jitsu. No, I'm kidding. His leg kicks. Yeah, I'll go with his leg kicks being the difference. But I do think John Castaneda is going to be the guy looking to make this a grappling match. And I think there are points to be scored there. I think this is a very close fight. The odds are pretty much even. It's a toss-up, and I haven't placed a bet on this one. Because I said, yeah, this is just going to ruin the parlay, and I don't want to have a bet on this one. I think I had a bet the last time on Gutierrez, and I was relieved when the fight was canceled. But yeah, I am. Maybe I'll look to play something, with the point spread and the decision props and whatever else and the over. But I do think this is going to be a close fight. I'd be surprised if either guy got a finish, but I'd be very surprised if that happened early in the fight. Chris Gutierrez always has the potential to chop a guy down, and every now and then, I suppose, there's a big flying knee or something he's got in there. But Castaneda, I think, in general, is the more dangerous guy. I think he brings more danger altogether, and I think he brings, of course, the grappling, which is a whole world of offense there for him. I think he's the better jiu-jitsu guy and the better wrestler. But I think Chris Gutierrez will succeed in keeping most of this fight standing. And on the feet, I think he racks up the little moments with those leg kicks. And I think he keeps himself safe from big moments and just gets the better of a technical kickboxing match against Castaneda. Again, no lock at all. This is a very close fight. I think John Castaneda, the guy that beat Miles Johns not long ago, that guy, and the guy that beat Muin Gafurov as well, he's definitely a force to be reckoned with. But getting finished by Daniel Santos a few years ago, even though he almost scored the finish himself in that fight, but that definitely changed his profile. And of course, being neutralized pretty much by Daniel Marcos, I think definitely has me going with Chris Gutierrez here. Again, razor thin odds, so if you want to bet on somebody, you bet on them, but I'm staying away from this one. However, the prediction remains Chris Gutierrez by decision. Next up, we have Evan Elder versus Gage Young. My prediction for this fight is Evan Elder wins. It just has to be. I would have been picking him to win anyway. But Gage Young taking this fight on a week's notice, yeah, I have to pick Evan Elder. But I do think Gage Young is a talented fighter and a potentially tough matchup for Evan Elder. I still don't know who Elder is exactly as a fighter. I don't know here if he's got a major curveball. He was supposed to fight that pedophile up until a few days ago, or alleged pedophile. But now he got a curveball and he's fighting Gage Young here. I think this could be a tougher matchup, and I think Evan Elder could have a tougher time on the feet with Gage Young. Gage Young has some sharp hands, and it seems like he's got some solid traits, including a good chin. But Evan Elder, I know he's confident in his stand up, and he should be. He's got sharp stand up, but I think he's underrated on the ground. And even though Gage Young is a wrestler first and foremost, I think he was wrestling since he was 5 years old or whatever, he's still the guy who was taken down 9 times against Quill and Sal Killed on the Contender Series in his last fight or 2 fights ago. And I think Evan Elder, he knows how to mix it up. And if he was looking to do that, and I think it would behoove him to be looking to do that, he could make this a tougher fight for Gage Young. And also maybe take away some of that cardio a little more easily. Gage Young does have another loss, and it was by round 3 armbar to this guy Bobby Lee. So there's a chance if Evan Elder is in much better shape and the fight goes that way, that maybe he can plug himself into that loss and close the show with a submission, like he did against Darius Flowers in his last fight. But that fight I haven't seen, to be honest. I just know it happened. I was able to see every other fight of Gage Young's career pretty much, but not that round 3 submission loss. I saw a picture of it though, and it looked like it might have been set up from the guard. Whatever. But regardless, though, those are the only 2 times he's been defeated, and he was TKO'd actually on in an amateur fight, one of his last amateur fights, which is still within the last 5 years. That was a round 3 TKO, and that was positional. The guy ended up taking his back, flattening him out, and getting him with ground and pound. So it's not like his chin failed him. But yeah, he's been beaten on the ground. Uh, Even though, again, he's a wrestler first and foremost. But yeah, Evan Elder, he's got 2 losses as well. Both these guys have a 9-2 professional record. And his one loss to Nazim Sadikov, in which he was finished, wasn't a real finish, and it's not a real loss. It was a very close fight. I thought he was winning, and Nazim Sadikov is actually surging in the UFC right now. So not a bad loss at all on his record. And against Preston Parsons, I think he took that fight on short notice and moved up in weight. And Preston Parsons, who is a monster with a ton of first round submissions, was all over him and had submissions locked up and submissions down the stretch. And Evan Elder was able to fight his way out of him and never really mounted too much of a comeback. But I still thought this guy is pretty solid on the ground just from watching him get his ass kicked. But yeah, he's definitely looked good in defeat in the UFC, and he's also looked pretty good in victory as well. And he's a hustler, no stranger to fighting 15 hard minutes in the UFC in victory or defeat, and he's in tip-top shape. With Gage Young having been TKO'd and submitted in round 3, I know one of them's an amateur fight, and also with Gage Young having stepped up on very short notice, I think Evan Elder will be the better man down the stretch. But I think if Evan Elder is looking to keep this fight purely on the feet, Gage Young is a technical match for him. Gage Young has some really sharp hands. He's got some good pop in his punches and puts together some fast combinations. Evan Elder's a guy who's shown he can take it, but he's got to mix it up, I think, and make this easier for himself. But yeah, the pick is definitely Evan Elder. I'll take him winning by decision. And you know me, I'll put a sprinkle or two on those late finishes. Next up, we have Matt Schnell versus Jimmy Flick. My prediction for this fight is Matt Schnell wins, and I've got him winning by decision because I'm an idiot. But yeah, I'll go with decision, but I have to say that there's a big, gigantic asterisk next to that decision prediction because these are two of the most vulnerable fighters ever. I mean, it's almost a lock that it's not going to a decision. But I'm still going to go with decision because of the technical breakdown, which I'll get to here and now. Matt Schnell has the worst chin between the two. He might have the worst chin in the sport. He's the guy whose lights get shut out between these two. But Jimmy Flick doesn't have a knockout victory. He can flick a head kick and knock him out. It can definitely happen. If it's ever going to happen, it's going to happen in this fight. But he is still the least likely candidate to cash in on that gaping hole that's sitting there, that big button on his chin. And I think that makes things more favorable for Matt Schnell in general. Now that I'm talking about TKOs, I'll break down the Jimmy Flick side of things. I don't know if I've ever seen Jimmy Flick knocked unconscious. Maybe against Will Campuzano or whatever. Or one of them, he was knocked out. But in general, he gets beaten down. He gets beaten down and broken. Physically. Maybe mentally as well. But he is not the most durable fighter. He's just not. Having said that, Matt Schnell is not the most likely guy to cash in on that. Matt Schnell, he's got 2 TKOs in his career, and they're knockouts. He's got very technical hands, really sharp striking, and if he lands on a weak chin here and there, he can produce a knockout, and that's what happened with him. But he doesn't have that physicality and that ground and pound to overwhelm somebody like Alessandro Costa did. Not typically, anyway. He's somebody who's not likely to beat up Jimmy Flick to that point. As for either guy getting submitted, because they're both submission monsters, I think the only guy to get submitted here would be Matt Schnell. Schnell is an excellent submission artist, really comfortable from the guard and the rest of it, but he's still the guy who's been subbed multiple times. 3 times as a pro and also against Tim Elliott on The Ultimate Fighter. Don't think I forgot about that. But those are generally to a better class of fighter than Jimmy Flick. Maybe not to the guy Clayton Mai. I don't know his name without fucking looking at it. But I do think Jimmy Flick, though, his grappling skills are right there with Brandon Royval and the other dangerous guys, and certainly Cody Durden, the last guy to submit Matt Schnell, because that's the first UFC victory for Jimmy Flick. Cody Durden wasn't able to submit Jimmy Flick, and Jimmy Flick popped his head out and eventually jumped a triangle on him and got him out of there in round 1. Not that you can just do MMA math and say, okay, A is better than B and B is better than C, A is better than C. But I do think, as for measuring their technical prowess in one area, that does make more sense to do MMA math. And I think Jimmy Flick is tougher to submit than Matt Schnell, in addition to being more dangerous. Jimmy Flick's got almost all of his victories being by submission. It's like 15 out of 16 or whatever. Almost a pure submission artist. And yeah, he's got a lot of them in round 1, sure, but he can get them down the stretch as well. And he showed that against Malcolm Gordon in his last UFC victory. So I think if these two get caught up in a wild fight, one that's taxing and taxing on their cardio, I think Jimmy Flick's submission danger will still be there for him. And this could be a fight where it's favorable for Flick. He doesn't have to worry about it being overwhelmed physically, even though he's up against a technically superior fighter, Matt Schnell, on the feet. He's at liberty to go for it because Schnell is perhaps more vulnerable than he is. And on the ground, he's able to force that fight. He's got an advantage, Jimmy Flick, technically, with his jiu-jitsu. So my point is there's room for Flick to win this by submission. And plus room for all the other shit I just alluded to over the last fucking 8 minutes, or however long I've been talking about this fight. But it really is a fascinating fight. I love betting on traits. When I zero in on traits and say, this guy's got this. I saw Matt Schnell get knocked out by Hector Sandoval. I don't know if I haven't bet on him losing by knockout in a fight since. And there's been like a dozen of them. So I'll probably waste some money on that here again. But yeah, the pick is Matt Schnell wins by decision. And I guess the reasoning behind that is despite all the vulnerabilities of Jimmy Flick, Schnell doesn't have the physical prowess to beat the shit out of him like the guys that have typically gone through him. Schnell just doesn't have it. Even the guys that beat him before coming to the UFC, Ray Rodriguez and whoever the fuck else, Will Campuzano, Chris Gutierrez. He's not that type of fighter, but he's technically superior on the feet, and I suppose there is a chance that Jimmy Flick can just be beaten to the point of discouragement, where a TKO is possible. But the pick for me is decision. Schnell wins by decision, and the bets are going every which fucking way. Next up, we have Ikram Aliskerov versus Andre Muniz, where I'm picking this guy, but I'm betting on this guy and all the horseshit. I am picking Ikram Aliskerov to win. I'm going to go with him winning by knockout in round one, and I will look to cover that with a bet, and I'm waiting to see what the under looks like and how that line is set. But I do think right now, with just the money line staring at me, plus 470 Andre Muniz warrants a small bet. Not that I've placed it, but I will. Andre Muniz is still the most dangerous guy, I think, on the ground. Even more dangerous than the two guys who beat him on the ground recently, Paul Craig and Brendan Allen. But that armbar of Andre Muniz going through Eric Anders and Jacare Souza. I don't know why I went with Anders first. But he's definitely a problem for anybody in the world on the ground, including Ikram Aliskerov. And on the feet, he's not so much of a problem, Andre Muniz. In fact, he's vulnerable there himself. But now so is Ikram Aliskerov. He's only got two losses, Ikram, and they're both to two of the top four fighters in the world, first of all, which is pretty fucking forgivable. But they are both knockouts. Within a few minutes, he was knocked unconscious. So I'm not saying, oh, it's a problem for him and there's a big button on his chin. I'm saying it remains to be seen. And even though it's not such a big concern against Andre Muniz like it is those killers, it's still it's something. It's something to consider in the matchup. And Andre Muniz, he can bring it on the feet. He is a big, strong athlete, but technically, I think he's behind Ikram Aliskerov. And grappling wise, even though he's a monster on top, I don't think he's going to be able to take Ikram Aliskerov down. This guy's a very difficult guy to take down. Hamzat Chimaev can tell you all about that. But yeah, Andre Muniz, he's vulnerable on the feet as well. Even though Paul Craig didn't exactly knock him out standing, he's got plenty of losses before that, and they're by round one TKO. There is a doctor stoppage, but he's also been legitimately TKO'd and even knocked out. Azamat Mirzakhanov knocked him out in seconds. So yeah, I think that's what's going to happen here. I've got Ikram Aliskerov forcing him to take some risks to try to set up some entry and make this a grappling fight, and Ikram making him pay early. I think if Ikram Aliskerov isn't totally shot, his chin should stand up to any offense from Muniz, and Muniz won't be able to stand up to his danger. So yeah, the pick is Ikram Aliskerov. I got him winning by knockout in round one. With just the money line staring at me, I've got to bet on Andre Muniz. But of course, I'll wait for the over/under, really the under, regardless of where it's set, and the props and the horseshit before making my stupid play. Next up, we have Randy Brown versus Nicholas Dalby. My prediction for this fight is Nicholas Dalby wins, and I'm going to go with him winning by decision. And the basis for the prediction is Nicholas Dalby, despite being an old man now in MMA terms, he does not stop moving forward, and he is still tough as all fuck. He's only ever been finished once, and it doesn't even count. That's how tough he is, because the guy tested positive for steroids. But Dalby has never been finished in his 5 professional losses that are still standing. And even though he's 40 years old, he's still showing he has that grit in him. Uh, Taking out Gabriel Bonfim and nearly handing Rinat Fakhretdinov his first loss as well in his most recent fights. And before that, it was outworking Muslim Salikov and Warley Alves, even though I thought Warley looked better than I expected in round three. But in general, Dalby's still the guy that I expect to do more work in round three. I think Randy Brown is a match for him on the outside with his striking, of course. I think Randy is going to be winning that battle. And Randy is not bad at all on the ground either. But I think Dalby is a guy that is tough enough to go through Randy Brown striking without giving up any big moments. And I think he's uh, relentless enough to slow down Randy Brown and slow him down and make this a more physical fight where Dalby can catch him, start getting off on him, and maybe even getting in close and trying to bully him in tight. But I think this will be close. I really think this one goes the distance unless either one of these guys falls off a cliff. Uh, Randy Brown's been finished a few times. He was knocked out twice and submitted twice. And in one of the submission losses, he was half knocked out. So I am aware of his vulnerabilities, but I still think Nicholas Dalby, his primary path to victory is outworking Randy Brown, crowding him, getting in his face, slowing him down, and beating him up in tight. So yeah, I'm going with Nicholas Dalby. He's still a guy that I have faith in at 40 years old, and I think his work rate is still there. Like I said, he could have been the first guy to beat Renat, and in general, he's looked great as of late. And I think he carries that momentum and gets by Randy Brown, who's still only, 33 years old. Randy lost his last fight to Brian Battle. It was a really close fight, but Battle was effective in slowing the fight down. And before that, his last loss was to Jack Della Maddalena, who's fighting for the world title in another week. That's his only other loss in the last 5 years. So he's got a lot of momentum. He's definitely in better shape at 34 years old. But I think Nicholas Dalby, right now, without talking about how bright their futures are, he's still a really big problem. And I think he outworks Randy Brown to win this fight. So I'm going with Dalby. Next up, we have and Abus Magomedov versus Michel Pereira. My prediction for this fight is Michel Pereira wins, and I'm going to go with him winning by round one knockout. I think he's going to be a tough guy to get to early. He's a really sharp athlete and a physical problem, even at middleweight. And I think he's going to be too dangerous, and he's going to go through the chin of Abus Magomedov, who's only been knocked out once. I mean, he was TKO'd against Strickland, but the only guy to ever really knock him out was Lewis Taylor, who knocked him out for the $1 million championship in the finals of the first PFL season, I believe. And it was in like 30 seconds with a big long hook that was longer than Abus expected it to be. But yeah, Michel Pereira, he covers a lot of ground, even without reaching with capoeira shit, which I hope he doesn't. If he keeps that shit to a minimum, I think technically he'll be superior to Abusupi and Magomedov, and he'll be leading the dance early. Abus is the better grappler, and of course we've seen Michel Pereira lose, especially recently, to Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. But Abus is not that type of grappler. Going through Bruno Fajeda is different than going through Michel Pereira. And Anthony Fluffy Hernandez is on a totally different level. He's got relentless wrestling. But yeah, I think he is still better, Abus. He's better on the ground. And if he is able to get him to the ground, I don't think he goes through Michel Pereira and forces a finish. But certainly I think he gets the better of him and wins the fight and maybe forces a finish. But yeah, on the feet, I think Michel Pereira is the better man, especially when he's firing on all cylinders. But he's a guy who has shown that he's got way better cardio than we all thought he did after he made his UFC debut, or that second fight anyway, against Tristan Connolly, where he just fucking shit the bed, getting too wild and creative, and ended up getting neutralized by a featherweight. But since then, we've seen him fight 15 hard minutes with some really, really good fighters and even force some finishes down the stretch with the seconds left against that one guy, the Russian dude. He got him out of there with a rear naked choke. And I think he's well equipped to handle himself in general for 15 minutes. Just like with Abus Magomedov, he was TKO'd by Strickland, and it looked like he just collapsed and had nothing left after round two, and he didn't. But he's fought only 3 fights since then, but it's enough to have erased that memory. Maybe not completely, but the stain is gone, and I'd say he's not a guy that has distinctly bad cardio. But yeah, cardio's failed each guy, I guess. But I think Michel Pereira is definitely the better man on the feet. They start on the feet, and he's a really sharp athlete who makes it difficult to change things around. So I've got him winning on the feet in round one when he's fresh. Michel Pereira by knockout is the pick. I also think he's in the realm of winning a decision if I'm wrong, which is why I've already bet on him and I'm comfortable with the money line. Up next, we have David Onama versus Giga Chikadze. My prediction for this fight is Chikadze wins, and I'm going to go with him winning by decision. The basis for the prediction is I expect this fight to be contested mostly on the feet, and even though it's no lock that Chikadze is going to win that battle, because Onama's a problem, I still favor Chikadze. I think he's the better technical kickboxer. And he still looks pretty sharp, even though he hasn't fought too much recently, and he's lost recently as well. But I do think David Onama has a lot of great traits as a fighter, and he's shown them in victory and in defeat. The guy can get his ass kicked and take it standing, and even sometimes turn the fight around and take the victory. You can ask Gabriel Santos about his power. David Onama was not having an easy time there, and he ended up knocking out Santos in the middle of round two, which was a big victory that's probably going to get better with age. And also against Roberto Romero in his last fight, he was hurt early on, dropped. He was getting his legs chewed up and then got dropped with a big shot. And he ended up battling his way back, not only into the fight, but into the round. And in the end, was comfortably running away with the fight, mostly standing, but even mixing it up as well. Speaking of which, he is the more well-rounded fighter here. David Onama is better on the ground than Chikadze. I think he wins the jiu-jitsu battle and the wrestling battle, and I think he's the only one who's trying to win all that shit in the first place. So it'd be wise of him to try to mix this up. But I still think Chikadze will generally be able to keep it standing throughout most of the fight, even if Onama was just a seek and destroy wrestler in this matchup. I don't think he can go through Chikadze easily like that. And on the feet, even though Onama's still a problem, especially with all those traits I talked about, the durability and the cardio and the grit, I still think Chikadze is sharper than him. And it's not like Onama hasn't shown vulnerabilities. He's been hurt on multiple occasions against Santos and Romero and 10 times in the Nate Landwehr fight. He's never gone out. No one's ever taken him out. But Chikadze, if he's technically superior, it wouldn't surprise me if he's able to get him out of there because the guy's got a lot of finishes. And I'm assuming kicks would be a part of that. But yeah, I do think this is a very close fight. I see the reasoning for Onama being the favorite. And Onama's definitely got more upside. He's like 30 years old. Chikadze, in addition to being inactive as of late, he is approaching 37 years old. So there's always the chance that the wheels have fallen off already and he's going to show up like Darren Elkins did against Julian Erosa. And it's going to be like, what the fuck happened? But I haven't seen it, so much like I did with Darren Elkins, I'm going with Giga Chikadze. I still think this is going to be a tough matchup for him, but I think he'll get to keep most of this fight standing where he'll be a little sharper than David Onama and perhaps in better shape, perhaps tougher there. Onama's never been knocked out, but he's been hurt a bunch. Chikadze's got a solid chin on him. And oh yeah, he was submitted against Austin Springer a few years back in round 3. So that could happen too. Just figured I'd mention that on my way out. Next up, we have Mingyang Zhang taking on Anthony Smith in what I believe is his final fight, his retirement fight. My prediction here is Mingyang Zhang wins, and I'm going to go with him winning by knockout in a few minutes. Even though Anthony Smith has been more durable than he was in years past, he's a savvy veteran these days. I'm just going to play Mingyang Zhang's record. Mingyang Zhang's record says he's either going to destroy you in a round or he's going to get finished later on, perhaps in round 2. And I will play Anthony Smith winning. I would say he has a better chance of closing the show with a submission, but him winning down the stretch in rounds 2 or 3, he's already a big underdog. I will play those props because I'm very sure if he wins, it's him outlasting Mingyang Zhang and dragging him into deep waters. Again, Zhang has all finishes in his 18 wins, 12 by knockout, 6 by submission, and I believe every one of them is in round 1. I think every single one of them's in round 1. He's already got 2 UFC victories in round 1, not to mention his win over George Tokos, who's also in the UFC, but he beat him on the road to UFC with a round 1 stoppage. He's violent, he's big, physical, and dangerous and violent, and I'm picking him to win with all the upside. But there is clear downside there, even though he hasn't been beaten in over 5 years, coming up on 6 years. And, that was back when he was a kid. Right now, he's 26 years old. So this was going back to when he was near 20 years old. And every fight before that he lost was when he was even earlier, even younger, obviously. But I still think he's a guy, even if he was 30 years old and much more seasoned, even though he's pretty seasoned with over 20 fights. But I still would have doubt in him, no matter how old he was and whatever, as long as he had never gone past round 1 in a victory. And he hasn't. So the doubt is there. Say what you will about Anthony Smith. He's got 1.5 feet out the door. I get it. But he is still a well-rounded, dangerous guy, and he is still a savvy veteran. He's been there, done that, and he's done it in every fucking weight class. He's reached the top of the sport, headlined a pay-per-view with John Jones, and even though he's definitely on the decline, and this is definitely his last fight and all the rest of it, he is definitely worth throwing a few sprinkles on. His money line would be enough if I wasn't so sure that there were these gaping holes in Mingyang Zhang, with him never having won a fight past round 1. So I'll wait for the props and I'll play it both ways. But yeah, the prediction is definitely Mingyang Zhang wins this fight. I see what you see. He's a problem. And Anthony Smith is, again, on his way out. So the pick is Zhang. And in the main event of the evening, we have Carlos Prates taking on Ian Machado Garry. My prediction for this fight is Ian Garry wins, and I'm going to go with him winning by decision. I'm going to take him winning by being the cleaner striker and winning the points battle there while keeping his body and face away from those dangerous knees of Prates and those dangerous hooks. And I also think if there are points to be scored on the ground, Ian Machado Garry is the man to score those points. I know Carlos Prates is better than meets the eye on the ground. And of course, he's training with a great fucking team. But Ian Machado Garry, the guy that I've seen take it to Shavkat Rakhmonov, especially in round 5 of all rounds, and the guy who mixed it up with Michael Venom Page, he's definitely got his grappling coming along, and I think he'll be the guy scoring the points there. Also because I think he's the more willing grappler in the first place. I don't think Carlos Prates is ever going to want the fight to be in a spot where he can't land a knee to your fucking body. But, yeah, look, as for Prates winning, I think his really only chance of winning is knockout. I would be surprised, certainly, if he won by submission. I know Jean Silva tapped Bryce Mitchell, but Bryce has only ever been finished by submission, so there's that. But Carlos Prates is not a likely candidate to get a sub. And as for Carlos Prates winning a decision, I think the only way of winning a decision is by getting more than a few big moments, giving Garry multiple near death experiences. And at that point, it just seems much more likely that he would win by knockout. Garry, of course, has never been knocked out, but he was knocked silly against Kenan Song, and he's been hurt by a few different guys. And of course, he was knocked out in training, of course. It's a fucking Brendan Allen story, but I do believe the story that he was knocked out in training a year or two ago. So there's that. But even without having seen it, ever seen him get rocked, I know Carlos Prates with his fucking danger, he's good enough to knock out Ian Garry or anybody else. So I think that's his only real path to victory, Prates. Ian Garry, I suppose he could finish him. Prates has been finished a few times by submission, way back in the early portion of his career, and he was TKO'd once where he was just kind of overwhelmed and got beaten up for 2 or 3 minutes, and the guy never really let off of him, and he kind of collapsed and got TKO'd. I think Ian Garry posted about it, posted a video of that fight a few days ago. But Ian Garry, I think his primary path to victory is decision. He's got the better grappling, and I think he might even try to score some points there, like he has against Shavkat Rakhmonov and Michael Venom Page. His grappling has come alive. But I do think on the feet also, he's going to be scoring points, racking up the little moments, keeping Prates off of him, because Ian Machado Garry moves really fucking well, and he throws probably more dangerous strikes than he's given credit for. I think he's got more pop in his punches than he's given credit for. And I think Ian will, in general, keep Prates at bay, stifle him with both his striking and the movement itself. And I think Garry wins this fight by decision. He is the guy taking the fight on short notice. I forget who he's replacing. I think he's replacing Jeff Neal. Yeah, that's right. Jeff Neal was supposed to fight Prates. And the fight was rebooked here as a 5-rounder against Ian Garry. But or maybe I have that completely wrong. But either way, Prates was ready for a fight, and Ian Garry stepped up on relatively short notice here. But he did the same thing against Shavkat Rakhmonov. I think it was like a month out, and he handled himself well, especially in round 5 of that fight. He was the last man standing. So my point is, I don't have any doubt in the cardio of Ian Garry. He knew what he was walking into when he signed the contract for 5 rounds. And I think he's going to be well equipped for 25 minutes. And I think he's going to stifle Carlos Prates on the feet, but also maybe mix it up on the ground and win this fight by decision. The pick is Ian Garry, and it's a toss-up right now, so I've already bet on Ian Garry, and I'm comfortable with that. I like the odds there. I'll wait to see the props, of course, because I think decision is more likely than anything else. But it's not like Carlos Prates loses too often, and it's not like he's lost too often recently. So, yeah, I'm happy with the money line, but Ian Garry is the play. Now, like, share, subscribe, all that horse shit, and check out my other videos.